we have the funding. So, so that's kind of in short. Though we are still a CLG, and one thing, when we stopped using the grant, I reached out to Pete at SHPO, he's the planner, historic preservation planner for the state. Because I wanted to make sure by not using that grant that we weren't hurting something, right? That we weren't hurting the amount of money that Idaho gets, that we weren't hurting our status as a CLG partner overall. And he said that, none of those were the case, that that the same amount of money would come in, and actually the amount of money we would get distributed to other communities in the state. So that's kind of the short of it. So instead of using this grant, we're tasked with using local funds instead.
So with that change, then can that $20,000 that's sitting there, is that something you appropriate to projects, or is that something that the commission decides of a project and we spend that money that way?
Yeah, the process is the same. Projects, we want the commission to be involved with what projects we're doing. So the main project I planned on doing was a historic preservation plan for the state, or for the city, a citywide historic preservation plan. The one we have is sorely outdated. And so I had met with a consultant to do that. And a citywide survey plan was also part of that as well. And we're kind of moving forward with that process and planning to consult with this contractor and put that plan in place. But when COVID hit, the budget was pulled back. We still technically have the money. It's just that the priorities have changed. And so we kind of put a pause on projects for a little while until we're kind of given the go ahead to move forward with that, which hopefully will occur in the new year. So yes, it does. The projects are still run. We still bring the projects to the commission, or help have the commission. The commission comes up with projects or prioritizes projects. So.
Can you say who the consultant is that you're working with?
Yeah, it was Carrie Davis.
Okay.
Yeah. So we work with her on a lot of projects. She does really good work. She does a lot of our survey work, citywide survey work. I will say that we did have a meeting with SHPO representatives, Paula Benson with Preservation Idaho, Carrie Davis, and some others to talk about a GIS project that we would like to do in the interim. It's not really going to cost us anything. It's more of just a swapping of data and some work by our GIS person in our department. So it essentially is going to create a GIS map of the city, pinpointing properties that have been surveyed, properties that are eligible or on the National Register, and it'll help the city kind of plan and identify where the gaps are in the city as far as what has been surveyed and what properties, older properties are maybe eligible for the National Register. So it'll help us kind of target properties or buildings for future National Register nominations, which is what we do sometimes. So that's something we're actually moving forward with because it doesn't really cost anything. It's just going to be time with our GIS person working with the SHPO GIS person, exchanging data and information on that. So, but again, hopefully things change in the new year and we can move forward with our preservation plan and implementing the citywide survey plan as well.
So basically, we're just taking we're doing it on our own with our own budget versus applying for grant
Right.
do a project.
Right. So the projects we were working on previously, every year we would identify areas that need to be surveyed, or we would do National Register nominations, various historic preservation type of projects. And usually our budget was $10,000 to $12,000 on those. And then after a while we just started getting questions, because our grants, no matter where they come from, have to go through a city review process. So when I apply for a CLG grant or plan to apply for a CLG grant, it has to be approved through a committee, grant review committee at the city. So they have to review it and they ask questions. What's this for? Why are you doing this? Who's providing the funding and who administers this and stuff like that. So that's kind of the process where this came out of, that, maybe this isn't. I was told by finance that they usually don't apply for grants under $50,000. So it was kind of small potatoes for them. So as long as, it was one of those things where you want to continue to work in that partnership with the CLG with the CLG partners and with the state. But I thought it was good that the mayor is willing to provide that budget, that money and more than we would normally get into our historic preservation budget, so we can actually do larger projects as well. So, and we don't need to find match for these projects either. So. And who knows, that could change. Each year I'll ask the same question to our finance department. Do you want us to continue using local funds, or do you want us to participate in the CLG process again? So that we know each year to year where we stand. So.
And where the decision on what projects you do is all just, that's a internal thing in the department. If you want to survey a new neighborhood,
Right.
you determine to do that.
Yeah, a lot of times there's a request from somebody to survey an area. Sometimes the neighborhoods will come to us. The neighborhood associations will want surveys done in areas. For the last two large surveys we did, it was a request from ENA, the East End Neighborhood Association. A couple of years ago, we started those. The Adalpe Heights, which I think I brought up with the commission a few times, that was surveyed. And then another section of the East End, a mid-century neighborhood in the East End, was surveyed. So, but yeah, typically, we'll have people come to us. We have people come to us that want their building nominated for the National Register. They want to know if the city will support that. And a lot of times we do. Ideally the commission is involved with projects. So when we get ramped back up and I know we can start doing projects again, really the one we're going to focus on is the citywide preservation plan. That's going to be a priority, but from then on out, we will have a work session annually, again, where we talk about potential projects. If the commission has any ideas on projects, or we'll bring to the commission, like we have in the past, a list of projects and say, these are kind of the projects we've received or requests we've received, and what does the commission see as important here, or how would you prioritize this? So.
I should just add a historic preservation plan. It looks at where the city's been, where it's at, and where it should be going. So theoretically, a good historic preservation plan will also have like an outline of priorities the city should be taking into consideration. So that might be surveys of certain areas. It might be National Register nominations to take advantage of tax credits. There's different things like that that should be included in the plan.
Yep. Yeah, and once we get to kick that off, if it's Carrie that we consult with, we will have her come and speak with the commission about that process and what will be in that. We'll have a work session to kind of open that up and discuss what's in the plan, and there'll be updates throughout that process.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so we will move on to the agenda. So items 1 through 4 on the agenda are findings of fact. So those are brought back to the commission to be ratified. So basically, those are the items last month that were denied by the commission. So hopefully you've had a chance to review those. And if those look okay to you, then those can be voted on and ratified. And those would just be on the consent agenda.
Hey, Ted. This is
Yeah.
Erica. Hi, this is Erica. I keep going in and out a little bit, so I know I can hear you starting, but I just want to say, if someone in the building, in the office could do like the meeting tonight, only because I can hear part of you, but then I think my laptop is going in and out. So I thought if we could ask that before we get started, because I know we're talking about the agenda right now.
Right. Sure. Does anybody else who has a better connection or somebody that's here want to chair the meeting?
I just am nervous that if I get going and then I'm doing something and you can't hear me or I can't hear you, I just don't want to interrupt it.
Okay.
And I could try. And then I just want to say it ahead of time, but I'm hoping I don't have issues. But you come in and out sometimes.
Okay.
I'll do it if you don't want to.
I don't want to do it.
Would you rather have me do it, Erica?
Well, Devin, I just think it might, let's start with you. And then if you don't mind, just because I'd hate to be the person that's like the hiccup, like holding us up this tonight. So if you don't mind.
Okay. I'll give it a try.
Okay.
Do you have the script?
Okay. I'll be studying for the next 20 minutes.
So items 1 through 4 proposed for consent. Again, those are just the findings of fact. Those aren't public hearing items. It's just ratifying, the commission ratifying what the decision was last month on those items. Item number 5, DRH 2362 is a certificate of appropriateness request to construct a 2-story single-family structure and a detached garage on a property located in the East End Historic District. We do have that. Staff has that recommended for consent. We've heard from, I think, 2 people on that in support of the project. The East End Neighborhood Association has indicated no objection to it. So we'll propose that for consent. And if
Hey,
there's
Ted.
Yeah.
Just a super quick question on that one. I mean, I think that's fine. I noticed that that the staff notes that project is a 2-story, but the letter notes it as a 1.5 story. Is that just a?
Yeah, we went back and forth with the contractor on that. You know, strictly by our code, it's a 2-story. You know, it appears as a 1.5 or partial 2-story from the front, but it does evolve kind of into a 2-story. So if you're looking at our code, technically we have to call it a 2-story, even though it may not appear that way. So that's how I do it in our legals, because if somebody was to challenge us on that, you know, that we're calling something, you know, something else that isn't consistent with our code. So yeah, it is technically a 2-story, though it does come across more as a partial or a 1.5. And I'll say the applicant did make some modifications. The original design, you know, I said would be problematic, and they were really good about redesigning the project so it'd be a little more compatible with the neighborhood.
Great, thank you.
Item number 6 is a 1-story ADU. A fairly small structure located in the rear of the property. DRH 2400. And we are also recommending that for consent. And again, if there are questions, comments, if you want something to be heard, just, speak up while I'm going through it.
Yeah, I
and
just
then
think keep going. I'll just,
okay.
I mean, if anyone else wants to speak up, that's great, but I'll just
Okay.
take your recommendations for now. And
Okay.
at the end, we'll figure out which ones we want to keep on consent.
Okay. Sounds good. Item 7, also proposed for consent. That is a accessory dwelling unit and garage located at 1312 26th Street. And that one is DRH 2419.
I would like to hear that one just because of height concerns.
Okay. And that one, I think in the report, it was proposed to be 9 inches taller than the peak height of the house. So we had a condition of approval in the report that it not exceed the peak height of the house.
Oh yeah, I recall that. That's fine. We can go on consent. I'm okay with consent on that one.
Yeah, because there's a few of those like that, Ted, and I'm assuming that if you are recommending them for consent, then they have agreed to the conditions of approval.
Right.
Yeah.
I was
Or I haven't heard.
good with that as
I
well.
send them the packets, and say if you have any questions or comments, let me know. So yeah, that one, I kind of think it might have been a mistake because when they turned it in, I thought that they had told me that it wasn't going to be taller than the house, but when I was looking at the plans, it looked like it was. So I just have that condition in there. So when it does come in if it gets approved, once it comes in for building permit, we'll check it to make sure it's no taller than the peak height of the house. Item number 8, we're also proposing that for consent. That one's a little bit different. That one, the garage is a little bit higher than the house, but it's due to a grade change on the property. So technically the garage is not taller than the house, but because of the grade change on the property, it comes out as I think about 2 feet taller than the house, I believe, if I remember right, but it is a bit taller than the house. But again, it's due to a grade change on the property, and the commission approved something similar about a year ago. So I kind of let that one lie. They did provide some drawings in there showing the height of the house showing the grade change and the height of the house compared to the garage. So I kind of left that one and leave that one up to obviously up to the commission to determine, but I did have that one on consent as well. Item number 9 is a request to remove the property from the historic district boundary, DRH 2434. And that one we will go ahead and hear. I have not heard from any neighbors or anything like that, and there's been no testimony or anything, comments to me on it, but I thought it would just be, we should hear it because we're removing a property from the historic district. So I thought it'd be a good one to go ahead and just go through. Item number 10, another ADU, another 2-story ADU, DRH 2440. I do have this one as well on the consent agenda. This one, I believe, went a little above lot coverage, so I have a condition of approval on it that it not exceed 35% lot coverage. I think it was 37% is what they came in at, so they'll have to make that adjustment. Item number 11 was deferred to the November meeting. That's DRH 2441. It's deferred to November 30th. So we'll have to have a separate motion on that outside of the consent agenda.
Okay.
And then item number 12 is a new house on a lot. This is DRH 2446, and it's a new construction house on a lot, substandard corner lot. And we haven't heard from the public on that one. And the applicants haven't indicated any issues with staff conditions, so we have that one on consent as well.
And I had it, is that the one where they're splitting the lot and building a house next to it, or is that the next one?
The lot's actually not being split. The lot has those underlying original lots of record,
Okay,
right? So there's about 3 or 4 lots actually on that property, which is throughout the city, in the older neighborhoods of the city, in or out of the historic districts. A lot of these lots you'll see, they'll show up on the maps as one lot, but they're these underlying lots of record that when the city was first platted, 100 years ago or whatever, those lots were platted out. The city still recognizes those. So if you go into the legal description of the property, you'll see lots 10 through 13 or something like that. And so what they did is they can go to the county and have one of those lot lines just brought up. And then they have to come to the city. And so then the lot line appears on the map. And then they come to the city and they say, I need to move this lot line to make room for a house. And so then they need to go through a record of survey process with the city. So they first need to come through us in the historic district and say, hey, I want to bring this lot line up. I want to adjust it. And I want to build this house. So they're coming here for that approval. If that approval occurs, they'll then have to come back to the city for a record of survey to actually move that lot line and get that process completed.
okay. And I noticed, and so this is the one, they're facing Dora Street. Is that, yeah, this is the one. And obviously we have nothing to say on what street they face, but is that unusual? Because it seemed like most of the houses along, I think it's 18th or 28th, whatever the number street is that's next to them, that most houses face that street, but they won't be. Is that typical?
I think it was because there was more room north to south to fit the house in that kind of elongated way, and the garage as well. So I think it just kind of made a more natural fit for the house.
Okay, great. Thank
And
you.
then I had a question on the garage. I was surprised to see that must have went through your department as okay, as opposed, since there's no alley.
Yeah, right. So we've had a few of these where there's no alley access, so they do need to take access from the street. Typically, like I said in the report, we do want to see garages detached, but in this case, the lot is such a strange configuration. There isn't a lot of room on the lot, even how they have it oriented. So to detach the garage would have required it to go back into a rear setback, and they would have had to gone through a variance process. So they requested just to keep it the way it is, attached and accessed off of the street.
Right.
Well, and also it looks like the house next door has a attached garage, so it's not something unusual in that area.
Correct. Yeah, there's a few of those around that area.
You mentioned, one last question, you mentioned that you were going to there were conditions in there for the sidewalk, curb and gutter, but I didn't see them. Did I miss them? Are the conditions of approval?
I might have missed that in the conditions of approval. That will be a requirement in the lot line adjustment, but we can add that back. We can add that in to this as well.
Okay.
The record of survey process requires curb, gutter, and sidewalk if it exists adjacent to the property. I can't, I'm trying to remember if they were going to ask for a waiver for I think they were going to ask for a waiver.
Yeah.
For the curb, gutter, and sidewalk. That might have been why I left it out of the conditions, so that, because they'll have to request that waiver through the record of survey process too, to not have to install it. And I think their justification is that there aren't any sidewalks in the area. So the commission can add that in, require detached sidewalk, curb, gutter, and sidewalk though.
Okay.
Here, and then, so.
Okay. I'd like to hear that one then.
Okay. And the final agenda item is another ADU. This is another one-story ADU on the property. And this one we will hear because we do have a condition of approval that I think the applicants want to talk about. So if you'll notice on the site plan, the ADU is kind of more level with that front bump out section of the house fronting Locust. And so it's not subservient to the house. You know, I didn't see it that way. And so I'd put a condition in that it be at least 5 feet back from the main wall plane of the house. So it kind of makes it a little more subservient. Again, we have a strange situation with a lot that's a house that's oriented not normally on the lot. So, normally the house would be oriented north-south, but it's oriented toward Locust. So that gives it, that constrains the, construction on the property that would be in compliance with setbacks. So if they do move that, if they do move the ADU back, they may be running into rear setback requirements, which is 15 feet, and they may have to get an ADU, but if the commission goes with the condition that it be set back from that front wall plane of the house. So that one we're going to hear.
So do we set the consent agenda now?
What's
Yes.
that?
Do we set the consent agenda now? What items are going
That'll
on?
be when the meeting starts at 6.
Okay.
So it looks like all items 1 through 4 is on consent. 5 is on consent. 6, 7, and 8 on consent. And then 9 will be heard. 10 is on consent. And 11 is deferred. 12 is heard, will be heard. And 13 will be heard.
Okay, I'd also like to hear 10. Did the rest of the commissioners, did any of you want to hear 8? The one with the,
I do want to hear 8.
yeah, with the grade difference? Okay.
And this is Erica. Do we need to have so at the beginning of the meeting, just thinking about like logistics, did we say Cindy's term was up? Is that what I wasn't able to hear Devin what she was saying. So with regards to like just ongoing meetings, like do we need to have a conversation about that? Because I think Cindy was chair and vice chair was somebody else. I can't think of who.
I
But
thought you were vice chair.
I don't know who vice chair is. But her term is up, but she needs to be reappointed by the city council.
Yeah, the mayor and council need to reappoint her before she can participate.
Okay. All right.
And unfortunately, there was just a communication glitch where we didn't know term was up, and so we'll get that taken care of.
Okay, great. So she's staying with us. That's fantastic. Great.
I hope so. If she wants to. Yeah, I think definitely.
I knew we were in the appointment stage of trying to appoint new members. And so I just wasn't sure if we were at new members, plus we needed to like readdress
Yeah, we have one more to fill, which hopefully will happen next month.
Okay.
All right. So it looks like we got 10 minutes before our hearing. So take a break.
I'll give it my best shot, guys. Okay, we're good to go. Okay, today is the 26th of October, 2020, and this is the scheduled time and place for the Historic Preservation Commission meeting. I am Chairperson Koski, and I now call the meeting to order. Ted, would you please call the roll? How about Victoria?
Here.
Koski,
Here.
Maroney,
Here.
Weaver,
Here.
Rupp,
Here.
Pape,
Here.
all present.
Okay, thank you. Have all the commission members had a chance to review the minutes from the September 28th meeting? Anyone have any questions or comments or changes to the minutes? No. Okay, hearing none, I will now take a motion on the minutes.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Victoria, please call the roll.
Rupp,
Aye.
Koski,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye. Aye.
Long,
Aye.
Pape,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, thank you. As for items for deferral, we have one item that's up for deferral. That is DRH 20-00441. Is there any member in the audience wishing to speak to this item? Anyone? No one online either? Okay. Having no one wanting to speak, I'll take a motion on deferral for that item.
I motion to defer it.
Okay, we have one motion, and do we have a second?
I will second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to defer DRH 20-00441. Victoria, please call the roll.
Rupp,
Aye.
Koski,
Aye.
Maroney,
I'm going to abstain just because I'm involved in this project and I want hands off.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Pape,
Aye.
motion carries 5 in favor.
Okay, thank you. Thanks everyone for being patient with me. I haven't run one of these meetings before, so I appreciate that. Next up, we will talk about the consent agenda. And first up, I will bring up to the commission the discussions and ratification for findings. These are items 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the agenda and are up for the consent agenda. Do any of the commissioners have any questions or comments or changes they want to make to those items? Okay, hearing none. Do I need to put a motion on that, Ted, to put those on consent?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to see if there's a motion to put items 1, 2, 3, and 4, discussion, ratifications, or findings on the consent agenda.
I motion- Sorry, I motion to put those items on the consent agenda.
Do we have a motion? And do we have a second? Thank you. With the motion and second to put those items on consent, Victoria, please call a roll, please.
Rupp,
Aye.
Koski,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Pate.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. We have a number of other items up for the consent agenda. I'll go over them one by one. First is DRH 2000362, Doug McFadden on 622 East Jefferson Street. Is the applicant present? Yes, applicant is present. Are you in agreement with the recommended conditions of approval? Yes, you are. Okay. Staff, was there any written opposition to this?
Mr. Chair, there was not.
Okay. Is there anyone willing, present tonight wishing to testify against this? There's none on the floor, or is there, and there's none online? Okay, seeing none, based on the representation of the applicant and the lack of opposition, DRH 2000362 will be placed on the consent agenda. Okay, next up for the consent agenda is DRH 2000400, Christy Newkirk at 1606 North 23rd Street. Is the applicant present? Not present on the floor, present online? Yes?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Are you in agreement with the conditions, recommended conditions of approval?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Staff, was there any written opposition to this matter?
Mr. Chair, there was not.
Okay. Is there anyone present tonight wishing to testify against this matter? I see none on the floor and none online. Okay, seeing none, based on the representation of the applicant and the lack of opposition, DRH 2000400 will be placed on the consent agenda. Okay, we have one more item up for the consent agenda. It's DRH 2000419, Chad Vincent at 1312 North 26th Street. Is the applicant present? Yes. Are you in agreement with the recommended conditions of approval?
Yeah, so the only one thing that was recommended on that was the house be underneath the existing home. And you guys had said that you wanted to make sure that it was that. I've gone through and double checked that, and it looks like it is actually underneath. So that was the only condition of approval that we really follow, but I found that it seems the house that we're putting in is actually lower.
So you do agree to conditions of approval that it's lower? Okay. Is staff, was there any written opposition to this?
Mr. Chair, there was not.
Okay. Is there anyone present tonight wishing to testify against this matter? We do have one person willing to testify. Okay. That being the case, we will hear this item and not put it on consent. We'll call you up when the item comes up. Thank you. We're just putting items on the consent agenda to help us move along tonight. So thank you. Okay. So we have the consent agenda set. Ted, do I need to mention each one that's on the consent agenda that we've just put on there, or just go for a motion?
Mr. Chair, I think you went through and called out each one, right? So I think you can just call for a motion to place them on.
All right. I as chair, yes? Someone say something? Now, I, as chair, move that the consent agenda and all items on the consent agenda be approved, subject to all the findings and conclusions and conditions of approval agreed upon for each application. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Rupp. Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Aye.
Koski,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Pape.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. For those that are online or on the floor and your item has been approved on the consent agenda, you're free to go. Otherwise, you're welcome to stay and listen. All right. Okay, so now we'll move to the remaining items on the agenda. Can everyone hear me okay with the microphone? I just want to make sure. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Thanks, Devin.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Erica, I want you back here next week, or Cindy.
We can be there for you.
All right. Okay, we'll move to the remaining items on the agenda. First item to be heard is DRH 20-00419, Chad Vincent at 1312 North 26th Street. Staff, can we please have the report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. The item is a request for a certificate of appropriateness to demolish a garage and construct a two-story garage with accessory dwelling unit in the expanded North End Historic District. This is an aerial of the property. And then these are site plans. The top site plan is existing, and then the bottom site plan is the proposed. All setbacks for the project and backup space are proposed to be met. And these are the elevations. As you can see, a two-story garage with gabled roof and large dormer, and an attached carport. These are photos of the existing contributing house, minimal traditional style house. And then some shots of the alley. This has been addressed. Staff had, in looking at the application, thought that the garage ADU was proposed to be taller, but the applicant has indicated that that's not going to be the case. So it appears the condition, there is a condition in the report that the garage peak height of the garage not exceed the peak height of the house. So it appears that that will be met by the applicant. And with that, staff recommends approval of DRH 2419 with the conditions of approval listed in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Is the applicant present? If you'd like to come on up, please come forward and state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 20 minutes. Yeah, come right up to the microphone and name and address for the record.
My name is Kevin Vincent. We need the address for this.
The address where you're at.
4220 Osage Street is our address. And from what we've heard here, it sounds like we're going to follow everything that you guys have proposed, which is following the historic guidelines. What we've found is that the house is 20, let's see, I got the notes here. The existing house is 21 feet 9 15/16, so almost 21 feet 10, and the ADU will be 21 feet 9 3/16. So we're about an inch underneath the actual house. And that's all my findings that I have.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any, I guess, commissioners, are there any questions for staff or the applicant? No questions? Okay. Is the Registered Neighborhood Association here to testify? We do have someone. Sherry is here. Okay, Sherry, if, not Siri, my phone just talked to me, sorry.
I got unmuted.
There
Can
we
you hear
go.
me?
I can hear you, Sherry.
The
State your
North
name
End
and address for the record.
Association. 1110 West Eastman Street, Boise, Idaho 83702. Here on behalf of the North End Neighborhood Association. No, the Neighborhood Association wants to go on record in support of the project, meeting the peak height such that they match or are close to, as staff recommended and as I believe you guys approved. And that's it.
That's great. Thank you, Sherry. Okay, let's see.
I'm Steve Skinner. I can talk to you. I've been texting you about. Hold on.
Is this when we ask for if there are is there any other testimony?
Mr. Chair, yes. So if the neighborhood association is finished, then yeah, neighborhood testimony, public testimony.
Okay, thank you, Ted. Is there any other person that would wish to testify for this matter? Please come forward. You can state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Do you mind if I adjust this a little bit?
Yeah, please go ahead.
My name is Jordan Reyna. I live at 1305 North 25th Street. I'm located directly behind the property where the unit will be built. And anything else on that aspect?
That's it. Go ahead.
Great. Well, my neighbor who lives right next to us as well, she asked me to read an email if that's all right, and I'll be very succinct. So this is from Michelle and Dan Neifert that live next door. They said, our concern on the building plans, first off, they mentioned they're not opposed to an accessory dwelling unit. That's a good thing to have. It says, our concern is that the building plans, that the upstairs windows and stairwell platform have direct and complete viewing access into our backyard. We request the plans be reconsidered so that the windows facing the alley are placed high enough to prevent direct view. We enjoy our small outdoor space, and we have 2 young daughters and enjoy playing outside as well. And we have created an outdoor space that provides the seclusion and privacy that we prefer in our property. Unfortunately, the power lines along the back fence don't necessarily allow us to put the landscaping taller trees up in that area to increase privacy. And so that was from Michelle and Dan, our neighbors next door. My wife, Leisha, and I, we moved to Boise several years back because of all the wonderful things that Boise has to offer. And our goal is to be great citizens. And it's really nice to see, you folks up here helping out and making sure Boise stays in a wonderful way. One of our main concerns is that the unit would be a 2-story unit that would butt up directly to the alleyway, and it would look directly into our backyard as well. COVID, it's been nuts, and it's the hot word these days. But even more so now than ever, during COVID, the backyard's really been our haven. It's been a place to where we've had friends over, good fellowship, good conversation. And we're excited to announce for our personal family that we're expecting our first little boy this coming December. And with all sorts of good news, there always comes expectations. And one of ours is that we wanted to create a space in the backyard that was private, within reason, and just a safe place for our little boy to crawl around, play, hang on the tire swing and such. And so with a new unit going in, we understand that the neighbors, great folks, we understand that the neighbors plan to put an in-law there, which is wonderful. However, the windows, as you can see on the garage side doors, are, it's on actually a different image, but the windows are going to be looking right into our backyard. And what we would propose is that they would consider changing the windows to where either they're set higher up to where we can still maintain our privacy, or that they consider possibly, if possible, internally turning the floor plan around to where the primary looking space is into their own backyard versus us and our neighbors. So that's kind of what our hope is for this effort. And that's about it for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any last questions for staff or the applicant from the commissioners? No questions? Okay.
Oh, Commissioner, I'm sorry. I didn't mean
Go
to
ahead.
interrupt you. I just had a question, if you may ask the individual who just spoke. Has he had an opportunity to speak with the owner of the home about their concerns on the windows?
Yeah, just come forward and answer that
So
question.
sorry. I can't see him, but there he is. Okay, I can kind of see him now. Hi.
Howdy. We have not had the opportunity to discuss it with them yet. We've actually been traveling as of late, heading down to Texas to visit some family. And so it was our neighbor next door who brought it up to us, Dan and Michelle, who I read that letter from. And from their conversations with our neighbors, the neighbors were mentioning that the windows were set in such a fashion that it would still preserve our privacy. But when we look at the blueprints from the website, we see that there is a kitchen window and also a bathroom window that looks directly down into the yard. But on the opposite side, which looks into the backyard, there are actually more privacy-based windows, it appears, facing that direction. So we were hoping to preserve the same type of privacy they have for their backyard as we would like to for ours.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Koski.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other commissioners have any questions for the applicant or for staff? Okay, hearing none. The applicant, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal, if you'd like. Again, you can, I guess, probably state your name and address again.
Kevin, 4220 Osage Street, Boise, Idaho. So my question is on your windows. I'm not sure which windows you're talking about on the property.
It's the ones directly above the garage doors. There's a kitchen window and then there's also a bathroom window. If you're standing inside, the bathroom window is going to be to your right and the kitchen window is going to be just right over the kitchen sink.
Could you guys bring that set of plans back up on that picture so I could talk about that? So you're looking at, let's see, E3.
I think maybe the next page, Ted.
That should be right.
Is that right?
So
Okay.
you're talking about E3, so that's looking at the carport, is that correct?
Either one of those. You're only seeing the one in the bottom left corner. That's what you see in the backyard. So, facing the backyard, the opposite side of that, which isn't shown on here where the garage doors are, that has two windows the size of two traditionally sized windows.
Okay, so you're across the alleyway.
Yes, they're directly across.
I think for us, it's really, with ADUs in Boise, I mean, we're gonna have windows up top on this, regardless of where they're at, and they kind of do look into those areas. We have actually talked with the homeowner, I believe the one that you had originally talked to, and we were addressing those concerns with the windows that were directly on her side of the yard. So he is across the alleyway looking across, and the lady that we are actually kind of working with is right next to us on the side. And so we're actually working to address those windows so they're more privacy based on that side. For that, kitchen window is kind of hard to do a privacy window for me. I think the bathroom window would be acceptable to kind of bring that up. But for me, it's quite a ways away from the actual side of that building of their property. So, we'd like to work with the Historic Society as much as we can for that. It kind of depends on what you guys would want to do for a smaller type window like that. The floor plan is kind of determined by where that door is, where you enter. It's kind of hard to move these small spaces around depending on where that door is. And so we're open to trying to make it more private for everybody else. We want to do, what makes sense in Boise. We're really about making this the best we can. So it kind of depends on what they would really want to see from those windows. I don't think we're going to get away with getting no windows on that side of the room, but that's just my opinion. So, but it depends on kind of what they would want. We could look through that and kind of see what that would work. I think we might be able to bring the bathroom window up, but the kitchen window's kind of kitchen window. So I'm willing to kind of talk with them and try to figure some things out. That's for sure. So it's what we would want is everyone to be happy around us. That's kind of what we're about. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, I'll close the public portion of this hearing and consider a motion from the commission to get things started.
Commissioner Koski, I will move to approve DRH 00419 with the conditions of approval that staff had identified at the beginning of our presentation.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to from Commissioner Rupp. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second by Commissioner Maroney. What kind of discussion do we have? Is there any discussion?
This is Erica, Commissioner Rupp, and I just want to say thank you to the homeowner as well as the neighbors and who came up to speak. I know we say this a lot when we have our meetings, but for those that are native Idahoans or those that have not been native but have moved here and have found value in our community, I just always appreciate how kind everyone is and just they're willing to be amenable and flexible. And so I just appreciate that. And I know that not every time can you find agreement with every single neighbor, but I appreciate your willingness to have open dialogue and communication. And from that perspective, I just wanted to say thank you to them. We try not to get in those sorts of conversations, but with regards to the plans that you have forward, I am in agreement with based on the conditions of approval. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rupp. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair. Sorry, I'm used to saying Madam Chair. I just wanted to say, given the rules and guidelines that we follow, I don't really see any reason that we could deny this. I think it's fantastic that they are willing to work with the neighbors and kind of hear their side of the story.
Thank you, Commissioner Maroney. Any other discussion? All right, having no other discussion, I guess I will call the roll. Victoria?
Rupp,
Aye.
Koski,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Tate,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Just have a comment to, since the applicant and the neighbors in front of me here, that I think it's great. That you guys are great. The applicant's willing to listen and great that you've got some input. And I would encourage you, since you've been traveling, I would encourage you now to have that conversation with the applicant. And I feel like level heads will prevail on this one and you'll be able to come to some conclusion. I think you're really, really close. And I think the commission feels that way too. So thank you. Okay, moving on to next agenda item. So let's see. DRH 20-00433 with Amy Algier on 1910 North 8th Street. Staff, can we please have the report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. This is a request to remove the rear porch area and construct an addition on the rear, to demolish the existing garage and construct a 2-story garage with accessory dwelling unit in the North End Historic District. This is an aerial of the property. And these are the existing and proposed site plans. And all setbacks are proposed to be met. These are the elevations. This is the rear elevation of the house showing the addition. And the right elevation. So the addition is relatively modest in size. And then these are the garage elevations. And this is planned to be, again, a 2-story garage with an ADU above and sort of a narrow shape. And the parking in it is proposed to be a tandem style parking. That's the existing house on 8th Street. Existing garage. And these are some alley views. Neighboring garages. So as mentioned previously, the height of the garage will be, I'm sorry, not 28 to 34 feet taller, but 28 to 34 inches taller. Typo on the slide there. Then the peak height of the house due to a grade change on the property. As indicated before, the commission has in the past made some exceptions to these kind of height differences due to grade changes on property. I believe one last year on 15th Street was approved with a similar grade change. So staff does recommend approval of the project, DRH 2433, with the conditions of approval in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Is the applicant present? I don't see her in the room, but is she online? Present online?
Should be Amy.
Okay, Amy?
Am I unmuted yet?
There you go. Amy, state
Okay.
your name and address for the record. You have 20 minutes.
Thanks. My name is Amy Allgeier. My address is 948 East Monarch Street in Eagle, Idaho. I think Ted did a great job with the presentation. I do want to correct just one thing. The height of the ADU is not 28 to 34 inches taller. The height of the ADU is only 12 inches taller. The height of the grade at the alley is 28 to 34 inches taller than it is at the house. So that's quite a bit of a difference in height. So we're, excuse me, the peak of the roof. Okay, now I'm getting all confused myself. Hold on, you guys. So the grade in the alley is 28 to 34 inches taller. The height of the ADU at the alley is actually 12 inches shorter than the house, but because the ADU is higher than the house, the peak of the ADU is 14 inches taller than the peak of the house. So that's the difference that we're talking about. And it's primarily driven by the difference in grade. It's hard to deal with a 2 to 3 foot grade differential when we have to tie into the alley. The alley is higher, so we can't really drop the garage because we have stormwater then running into the garage. We have to try to catch that and mitigate it and put it somewhere else on the site. So that's really the trouble that we were running into on this site, is to get enough height in the ADU, enough height to have an ADU upstairs and still get our garage, the height that we need in the garage below. The ADU is relatively small. If we try to drop the bearing height in the ADU to get it a foot down so that it would be the same height as the house, excuse me, we'd be losing about a third of the square footage in the ADU. So we'd be dropping from about 450 down to 300 square feet. For a small space, that makes a huge difference. So those are the struggles that we were up against, trying to get the height of that ADU down. And I guess I just like to hear whatever questions the commission has so we can address those.
Thank you, Amy. Are there any questions for the staff or the applicant?
I have a question. My question's for the applicant, and I was wondering what materials are you going to be using on the addition?
On the addition, we're proposing a hardy board siding and then a composite roof shingles to match the existing house.
Is there any way to differentiate that addition from what is present?
Well, the existing house is brick, so I think we are differentiating it quite a bit.
Can you, and the windows are going to be very similar too, they're 1/1?
Oh yeah, we typically are told by historic staff that, you know, if there aren't grids on the existing windows, that they would prefer that we match the not having grids on any new windows.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do we have any other questions? Okay, hearing none. Is the Registered Neighbor Association here to testify?
Hi, Commissioner Koski, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Sherry, state your name and address for the record. You have 20 minutes.
And sorry, I keep checking with you. I've got an unstable internet connection, so I'll be brief. Sherry Batazzo on behalf of the North End Neighborhood Association at 1110 West Eastman. The Neighborhood Association wants to go on record in support of the project for two reasons. One, while it's preferable that the ADU or the additional unit not exceed the height of the house, it does sound like there's an extenuating circumstance that requires the small height increase, and seeing that no neighbors have gone on record in the file in opposition of the project, the Neighborhood Association supports the project, and that's all.
Thank you, Sherry and North End Neighborhood Association.
Commissioner Koski, this is Commissioner Rupp, and I apologize, I did not ask earlier. I did have a question for the applicant, and I could hear the Neighborhood Association. I too have unstable internet, so I didn't hear the first part, but I hear that they are in support of it. So that is helpful. I did have a question with regards, I see in the site plans a tree is being removed for the garage and the ADU, and I just was wondering if, like, was that, what was the condition of the tree? I know we try to, maintain the neighborhood with regard to like natural trees and so forth that were there. And I just didn't know if that was something of concern for neighbors and or if it was necessary for, I'm assuming, looking at what we have and what's being proposed, that tree could not stay.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Okay, Commissioner Rupp. So there were three reasons that we placed the garage and ADU on that side of the site. First of all, that tree it's not in great health. It's been dropping some limbs and the owner is concerned about it to begin with. Second, the alley is lower on that side. So that allowed us to push to try to keep that roof lower than the house, or at least about 10 to 12 inches lower than it would have been on the south side of the site. And the third reason is the owners really want to keep their south light coming into their backyard. So it made more sense for them, logic-wise, planting-wise, to put that structure on the north side.
Thank you.
Okay. Without any more questions from the commission, are there anyone else in the audience here to testify with this matter? I see none in the room, none online. Okay, thank you. Any last questions for the staff or the applicant from the commission? No? Okay, the applicant, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal. Amy, if you'd like.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted again.
Yes.
Okay. I don't really have any rebuttal. Sherry and the North End Neighborhood Association were in favor. I guess one more note that I would point out is that 8th Street is, that the house in this situation is quite a bit lower than the alley, and 8th Street is quite a bit lower than the house. And this house is fairly massive. So from the street, even though this garage ADU is going to be about 14 inches taller than the peak of the house, I think we have, Ted, in the packet, there's a diagram that shows the view lines for a 5-foot tall person from the street. We're never going to be able to see the peak of the roof of the garage from either side of 8th Street. So I think in this situation, I think that really helps to mitigate the fact that we're a little bit higher, given that it really can't be seen from the front of the property. And that's all I have to say. And unless anybody has any more questions, I'm happy to answer for more questions.
Thank you, Amy. Ted, I wonder if you could pull up page 256 in the packet. It's the view lines from the street page. Amy was referencing this page in her comments just now. While Ted is finding that, commissioners, do we have any other questions for the applicant before we move on? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public portion of this hearing and we'll consider.
A little bit further, Ted.
I'll close the public portion of the hearing and consider a motion on this item.
There.
That's it. Thanks, Ted.
Ted, Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion.
Okay.
I would move that we approve DRH 20-00433 with staff's recommendations.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
A second from Commissioner Maroney. Any discussion?
Yeah, excuse me. I'll just note that while typically I would be against anything, any kind of garage or ADU being higher than the house, that in this circumstance, that technically isn't higher than the house. I guess the height of it is lower than the house, although it ends up being higher than the house. But I appreciate the applicant's awareness of the sight lines and that you wouldn't be able to see that from the front of the house. And from the street view, you can tell that the house is very wide and pretty much blocks any kind of view from behind the house. And I actually think you will be able to see this garage less than you would have been able to see the garage that was there before, because the garage that was there before actually stuck out beyond the side of the house a little bit. So that is why I'm in approval of this.
Thank you, Commissioner Weaver. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair, I just want to echo what Commissioner Weaver has said. I think this is a perfect example of why we have a commission, so that we can make these case-by-case judgments. And normally we wouldn't allow something that is taller than the house, but because of the unique circumstances on this lot and the consideration that the architect and the homeowners have made, I think that this is a great project to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Maroney. Anyone else? Okay, with that, Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Aye.
Hosky,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Tate,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, thank you. I will now move to DRH 20-00434, Robin Gates, 2115 Heights Drive. Staff, Ted, will you please bring us the report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. This is a request to remove the property from the historic district boundary located in the North End Historic District. So this is 8th Street where my cursor is going north-south. And then this is Heights Drive here. The property is kind of an odd triangular property located just up Heights Drive off of 8th Street. And it's located within this mid-century neighborhood that is not a part of the historic district. And there's the historic district overlay map. So you'll see the property as you're going along 8th Street, the properties in the historic district are generally fronting 8th Street or have frontage on 8th Street. This property is tucked back a bit. This property where my cursor is right in front of it actually fronts 8th Street. And then this property and this property front 8th Street. The subject property does not have frontage technically on 8th Street. It's fronting Heights Drive in this, again, within this mid-century subdivision or neighborhood back in here, which it seems to be a more natural member of. And then there's just some aerials provided by the applicant showing where the house is located back in here. And then some viewpoints from 8th Street. So this is taking a picture from Heights and 8th. And so the house is located up in this area that is circled in blue. And then you can see it from 8th Street back in here as well. So this house down here where my cursor is actually the house in front of this property that fronts 8th Street. So as discussed in the staff report, some background on this as well. So a project came before the commission about 2 years ago to demo that house and to build a new house on that property. And at that time, there was kind of a question of why this house was in the historic district when it was generally in a neighborhood that wasn't in the historic district. So that kind of topic kind of came up at that time. And ultimately, I think it prompted the applicant to, or the property owner to come before the commission and see if they could just get their property removed from the historic district boundary. And so we are recommending approval to remove that property from the North End Historic District. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Is the applicant present? Yes, we do have the applicant present. Please come forward and state your name and address for the record, and you have 20 minutes.
Hi, Robin Gates. I am the owner of this home, and I think Ted explained what my position is on this. The line for the historical is basically a rectangular box that goes through town, and part of our property happens to intersect that. So I think it just grabbed onto ours. But if you could see where our driveway apron is, we're clearly in the Heights neighborhood. And I don't know if Ted showed the photograph of our house so that you can see that we, just the architectural style. I don't know what kind of words I could use for this, but in my personal opinion, we are not historical. My goal is to be zoned compatibly with my neighbors on Heights and be held to the same design criteria and standards as they are. I don't know if that's in there, Ted.
Okay, we're still looking for the picture.
That's okay.
It is a non-contributing structure. I can bring it up.
I attached it to my application, if that helps you find it.
Let's see if I can find it.
It was titled something like architectural style. Yeah, keep going.
There it is.
You'll know, there you go.
Okay.
So I'm just requesting to get removed from the historical district and be treated like the other homes along Heights Drive. Please.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions for the staff or the applicant?
Ted, I have a question for you with regard to the historic district. So we don't talk about this a lot, but sometimes these non-contributing properties are included in the historic district because changes to those non-contributing properties can affect the overall setting of the historic district, including views. So my concern is if the applicant then goes and puts a 2 to 3 story house there, that's going to be a change to the setting of the neighborhood. Was that considered in your review?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Brown, really it wasn't really considered because again the property is set back off of 8th Street. The grade of the property, and maybe this could have been discussed, the grade of the property really prohibits any construction in this lower area. It's a very steep grade here. So the construction envelope for the house really is in this area here. So future development, you know, it doesn't seem like it would have a negative impact on 8th Street, on the properties along 8th Street, just due to the location of the building pad in this area. I mean, the applicant could build a house compatible now in the historic district, compatible with the surrounding properties. There are several larger 2-story properties in that area, but that wasn't really deeply considered in the report. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the commissioners for the staff or the applicant?
Commissioner Koski, yes, this is Erica or Commissioner Rupp. I did have a question for staff. So I do remember this application being brought forward because I thought when we had this today, I feel like we've seen this, but didn't we approve their proposed plan and they were going to take it down and put a new house on and we approved that? So is that no longer, I take it they haven't done that. So now we're like, don't do that. They want to like get out of the district. Am I hearing that correctly in my history of what was brought forward?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Rupp, yes, that's correct. So they, a couple of years ago, there was a proposal to demo this 1-story house and put up a 2-story house, which was roughly, I think, 26 feet tall.
Yeah.
That was approved by the commission. And it was at that time that kind of the questions came up of, you know, questioning why the house was located where it was. But yes, a 2-story, about 26 foot tall, I believe, house was approved here, but I don't think the applicant, I know the applicant hasn't started construction on that. I think they're going through, as I mentioned, there's a steep hillside. So you see where the house is, that's the building envelope. Then it's very steep in here. Any construction on that property requires a hillside permit through the city to evaluate the engineering, the soil, and the slope. So I think they're in that process right now. So they're not at, the house that's there now is still there.
Thank you.
I have a question for the applicant, especially considering Commissioner Rupp's comments just now, but the question I have for the applicant is there a reason you want to be taken out of the historic district just in addition to the fact that your house doesn't match, for lack of a better word? So, I mean, is there something that the historic district has in it that you don't want? I mean, why do you want to be removed from it, I guess?
Can you hear me or do I have to?
I can hear you.
Okay. Well, first off, we did get our original design approved through historical and our hillside application and our ADU after all that time. And then in that week, something came up where we just need to reevaluate our design. So I basically have to tweak the design. It's going to be very similar to what we have right now approved. So I'm gonna have to go through the whole process again. But the reality in my mind is that we this whole time have been part of the Heights neighborhood and not part of the North End neighborhood, except for that line that goes through our property. So I wanted to see if we could get removed and have the same design constraints that all of our neighbors above us and around us have, since we're part of their neighborhood. I feel like our argument is solid, but of course that's my opinion. But in redesigning, our design would be extremely similar. It would just be held to the design standards of our actual neighbors in the neighborhood. And as far as us affecting the view of anyone in the North End neighborhood, we're higher than they are. So I'm not sure if I read that statement correctly, but we're above them by a couple stories. And we're not in the direction of the view. So there's no way that we're going to be affecting the neighbors in the North End neighborhood that we're asking to get removed from. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Without any further questions, I'd like to ask if the Registered Neighborhood Association is here to testify. And Sherry, are you still around?
I'm still here, Commissioner Koski. This is Sherry Batazzo at 1110 West East. But we discussed this request and read staff findings. And we actually supported it because while we didn't want to set any kind of dangerous precedent for people who want to be removed from the historic district, or like we've been sensitive to in the past, having contributing properties be reclassified. It's a non-contributing property. It is kind of clearly inside a strange outline. And while we wondered the same thing, had the same question for the applicant, what is it that has you inside the historic district that's keeping you from doing what you want to do that's in the past been approved and could likely be approved in the future? We also supported them being removed from the district. And that's all I have.
Sherry and Nina, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to comment regarding this matter? I see none in the room. Do we have any online? No. Okay, any last questions for staff or the applicant? Applicant has 5 minutes for rebuttal if you'd like.
No, I think that I've said everything that I wanted to say. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll close the public portion of the hearing and consider a motion from the commission.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Maroney here. I would move to approve DRH 2000434.
We have a motion for approval from Commissioner Maroney. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Weaver. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I remember this applicant coming through several years ago, and it was like the kind of thing that sticks in your memory because it doesn't make sense in terms of like the character and the neighbors they face and interact with, why they're in the North End Historic District. And I think that they're wise to be removed because it's not fair to hold them to the character we're trying to preserve in the North End neighborhood when they're not in the North End neighborhood. So to have them have to stay within character to a neighborhood that they don't belong to when the houses that surround them don't have to follow that character, it doesn't seem logical. And that's why I support them being removed.
Thank you, Commissioner Maroney. I echo your comments as well. I think that's well said. Any other discussion? Okay, I want to thank Nina for speaking up also as the neighborhood association in something that is, I think, very important as far as the boundaries of our historic districts. So without any further discussion, Victoria, if you could call the roll, please.
Rupp,
Aye.
Hosky,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Cape.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Great, thank you. On to the next item, DRH 20-00440, Chad Vincent, 2207 Ellis Avenue. And Ted, if we could please have the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. This is a certificate of appropriateness request to demolish a garage and to construct a 2-story garage with accessory dwelling unit in the expanded North End Historic District. And this is an aerial of the property. It fronts Ellis Street and has a existing garage structure here abutting the alley to the rear to the south. And these are the site plans. This is the proposed site plan with the structure located here. It will be side loading. All backup space and setbacks are proposed to be met. However, it appears the lot coverage will be, I calculated it about 37%. And so we do have a condition of approval that the structure not exceed 35%. And these are photos of the house. So it's a fairly large house, tall house. There's no concern about exceeding the height. And alley views. So we do have a condition of approval that the height not exceed the garage, but there wasn't really a concern there. But the lot coverage was something that staff did take a look at, and it looked like it was going to be about 37%. But with the recommended conditions of approval, staff recommends approval of DRH 2440. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Is the applicant present? Yes. If you'd like, please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you have 20 minutes. 2 for 1 for you tonight.
All right. My name is Kevin Vincent, 4220 Osage Street, Boise, Idaho. So from what we've heard, everything looks good to me for what we have going on. From what I have found, I've calculated this over and over, trying to figure out exactly what you guys found. My total property percentage is 34.9 with a couple points after that. I've drawn that over and over and over. We want to make sure it's under 35, so that's one of the big things. So we're just trying to figure out really how that kind of came about, what we need to do about that. We're okay with if it really truly is over 35, with bringing that back, which I think it's like 5 inches on one of the walls to make sure that that follows that 35%. Do you know, Ted, if you calculated the existing garage into that calculation?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, typically when I'm calculating lot coverage, I'll just I'll use our aerial maps and do a dimension of the property, removing the structures that are going to be removed and then calculating back end. However, it's not a perfect science just because our GIS maps aren't perfect. So I would recommend, if the applicant is saying that the project is under 35%, then I'm comfortable with that.
It's just a hair under, but it is there. So from what I've found of measuring the house and the property itself.
Okay, so you would agree to the findings then in the,
Yeah, to make sure it's
And
under
conditions.
35%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay?
Yep. And I think besides that, I think everything's good for me. I appreciate the recommendation. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions for the staff or the applicant? I don't see any questions. Okay, is the Registered Neighborhood Association here? I don't see him.
Hi, Commissioner Koski. It's Sherry Battazzo from the North End Neighborhood Association at 1110 West Eastman Street. We just wanted to say that the North End Neighborhood Association wants to go on record in support of the project with staff's findings, with the condition that it does stay at the 35%. So as Ted said, if the calculation comes out to that, then we support the project, but we do like to keep lot coverage at 35% or less. And that's all.
Okay, thank you, Sherry. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak or comment to this matter? I see none in here and we have none online. Okay. Applicant, you have 5 more minutes for rebuttal if you'd like to state anything else. Okay. All right, with that, I'll close the public portion of the hearing and I'll consider a motion from the commission to move forward.
Chair, I'd motion to approve DRH 20-0040.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Brown for approval.
Second?
And we have a second from Commissioner Weaver. Any discussion? No discussion. I don't know. Do we need to add to the motion that it's motion of approval is based on the conditions stated, or is that fine?
Mr. Chair, I think that's just implied. So
Okay.
we do have a condition that it be under 35%. So as long as it complies with that.
Okay, great. Any other discussion from the commissioners? No other discussion? Okay. That being said, Victoria, call the roll, please.
Rupp,
Aye.
Koski,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Pape.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, next item is DRH 2000446 Hans Glen, 2023 North 18th Street. Ted, do we have the report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certificate of Appropriateness request to construct a parcel 2-story single-family structure with an attached garage. The property is located in the expanded North End Historic District. This is an existing aerial of the property. So the existing house fronts Dora Street. This property has a couple of underlying lots of record, original lots of record. So it's not an actual land division. What they're doing is bringing up one of the underlying original lots of record, making that visible on the map, and then requesting the city to adjust that to fit a house on the corner of the property. So this is the site plan that's being proposed, and you can see the existing house here, and then the new house located here, going north, south, fronting Dora as well. And then access to the garage will be taken directly off of 18th Street. Typically, we don't want to see garages attached to the house and don't want to see street access, but in this case, there isn't a lot of choice in the matter of as far as the access goes. There isn't an alley present, so access does need to occur if the project is approved via the street directly. And then as far as the location of the garage, as far as it's being detached or attached, the lot if the garage were attached and separated from the house, the required amount of distance from that house, which would be at least 6 feet, it would encroach into the rear setback of the property. So staff in this case was okay with the garage being attached. And the commission has approved similar circumstances with attached garage just a couple of months ago. One was approved as well with an attached garage and access off the street for a new construction. These are the drawings of the new house. Some craftsman elements, but also some more modern feel to the house with the larger windows and the balcony. So it comes across as about a partial 2-story house, compatible with the area as far as height and massing go. These are just some photos of the site, the existing house next door on the property, and then just the land where the new house is going to go in the bottom there. And then some of the neighboring properties. As you can see, as with most of the area in the north end and expanded north end, it's an eclectic area with different styles and sizes of homes. And staff does recommend approval of DRH 20446 with recommended conditions of approval in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Is the applicant present? Not in the room, I'm assuming online. Yes. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you have 20 minutes.
Hi, I'm Christy Newkirk. Work with Hans Glenn, the applicant, but I'll be presenting this today. Again, I'm Christy Newkirk. My address is 11939 Musket Drive in Boise. Thank you for considering our application on this lot. The current owners of the existing home would like to split their lot, like Ted was mentioning. The existing home will remain on the property closest to the alley. The new property is not going to have access to the alley, but it will have an easement for sewer access. And once we receive approval from the Historic Commission, we will continue with that land division and get that settled with the city. The design of the proposed home is much more craftsman and in line with historic requirements than the existing home, which is categorized as contemporary. The existing home has had several alterations from previous owners, which may be why it wasn't classified as contributing. The proposed home includes some corbel details, base and belly bands to break up the mass, and 2 different textures of siding. With the constraints of the lot, a front porch was not feasible. And in its place, we designed a faux front porch with a small 2-foot roof structure over a concrete pad. The roof structure will incorporate open rafter tails and is mimicked in several other places around the home for continuity. We focused on sustainability for this new construction. We're going to utilize natural daylighting and cross ventilation, and we're trying to maintain the existing vegetation and mature root systems as much as possible. We're using green materials like fiber cement board, non-formaldehyde insulation, no VOC paints, and zip panels to create an envelope, which in our other homes that we've built ends up being about 40% more energy efficient than normal code-built homes. And with these standards, our home is not only going to visually enhance the neighborhood, but will also reduce energy use and increase the quality of air and health for anyone who might live in the home in the future. When we do this lot split, it is going to create a substandard lot according to City of Boise code. And in accordance with the substandard lot code, we will have to improve the right-of-way with a 5-foot concrete sidewalk, curb, and gutter. And we're hoping as part of this application that we can request a waiver for this requirement. There's no adjacent sidewalks, curbs, or gutters for blocks in either direction on both Dora and North 18th. Also, the requirement for this lot, or for sidewalks on this lot, would require the removal of nearly all the mature trees that are bound on the boundary of the property. And I believe that's about 6 over 25-foot tall trees. The sidewalk with the existing conditions, a sidewalk, curb, and gutter would be unnecessary and detrimental to the block face, as the entire block is mainly consisting of mature trees. As this neighborhood is well established with existing homes, it doesn't seem like much development will occur in the near future that would require adjacent properties to connect to any sidewalk and gutter that we would create also. So thank you for your time, and we look forward to your input.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commission for the staff or the applicant? Okay, I have a question for staff, for Ted. As far as the curb and gutter and sidewalk, there was, I think in your report, some discussion about it being part of the conditions for approval. I didn't see it in there. Could you maybe clarify that for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I did discuss that. I must have inadvertently left off the conditions for the curb, gutter, and sidewalk. I knew the applicants were going to ask for a waiver on that. And, you know, a lot of times with those waiver reviews, they are looking at the context of the surrounding neighborhood. Is there connectivity to, if they were to require the installation of curb, gutter, and sidewalk, is there connectivity to that on the adjacent properties? So that's sometimes what they look at when they're reviewing the record of survey, for instance, which does require by default curb, gutter, and sidewalk on the property, which is where they'll ask for their waiver. However, the commission, if the commission feels that the curb, gutter, and sidewalk should be in there and should be a part of this project, then you can add that, obviously add that condition back in that I left out. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the commission for the staff or the applicant? Okay, seeing none, Registered Neighborhood Association here. Sherry, are you here? Okay, Sherry, you have, state your name and address. You have 20 minutes.
Okay, I've unmuted myself if you can hear me. Oh, it looks like you can. Sherry Battazzo, 1110 West Eastman Street, on behalf of the North End Neighborhood Association. Commissioner Koski, the Neighborhood Association wants to go on record taking a neutral position on this one with a few comments. One, as generally we support staff's findings because we just think they do a great job. And we also, I've been remiss at not pointing this out on the past comments that I've made, that unless other neighbors have supplied comments that go on the record, and I always take a look at the file, it doesn't look like anyone has come out in opposition of this project. So typically we'll support something that doesn't have opposition. This seems to comply with the city's plan for greater density. So it's hard to say that that it shouldn't be, and it looks like it follows in line, you know, with the elements that the historic district likes to see in new construction. So since no neighbors have come out in opposition, as the file shows, unless someone's here to testify tonight, the Neighborhood Association just wants to go on record making these comments and holding a neutral position. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Sherry. Is there anyone else who would like to comment on this matter, either in the room here or online? Don't see anyone. Okay, any last questions for staff or the applicant from the commission? Nope. Okay. The applicant, you do have 5 minutes for rebuttal if you'd like to say anything else.
No, I think that's everything.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll close the public portion of the hearing and consider a motion.
I'll go ahead and start. I move that we approve DRH 20-00446. I believe that's the number of it with staff's recommendations.
I will second.
We have a motion for approval and a second. Do we have any discussion?
I would just like to have some discussion.
Sure, go ahead,
Um,
Commissioner Brown.
So we've been seeing a couple of these projects that are energy efficient, which I really like. But we've also seen other projects that come in, and we're trying to replicate the past with the houses that are in these neighborhoods with craftsman style. So, I mean, overall, they do a pretty good job, not falsifying everything, but like the use of knee brackets and things like that could have been, I guess, taken away out of the design, and it might have less craftsman elements to be included in it. And more modern and contemporary. Like I like the use of the windows on the first floor. Those are nice. The second story windows on the front facade could have been different, but overall it's a good design. I think we're moving in a better direction each meeting with these designs. And we're not getting what we call faux craftsman or false sense of history. So it's clashing with standard 3 of the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. So that's my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Any other comments? I'd like to make one. Goes back to the curb and gutter and sidewalks. I would like to see that added to the motion. I don't know if that would be considered, or I'd like to request the commission to consider that also. I'll go back to the person who made the motion, and I guess Danielle.
Mr. Chair, can I comment on that quick?
Oh yeah, please go ahead.
I'm in disagreement with you because I live within a couple blocks of here. There's no curb and gutter anywhere. Like I believe the architect was saying, they're going to have to remove the trees, and this is a block that has lots of trees. Historically, 18th Street is where the trolley ran, and so 18th Street is already really wide. I walk this street pretty much every day with tiny children because I have 2 of them, and I just don't see the curb and gutter as necessary in this project. And I think it'll actually interfere with the character that's already existing on this block, and actually several blocks around it. It has no connectivity. It's not going to hook up to anything.
And I agree with her too. You're creating, again, the false sense of history that there was never a curb and sidewalk there. So there's no need to add that to the neighborhood. As she said, it was a trolley line, so you would have walked outside your house, jumped on the trolley, and that was it. So I don't think we need to add sidewalks where sidewalks weren't historically. It's just that progression that we see in the development of the neighborhoods.
Okay. Any further comments? Okay, hearing no more discussion. Victoria, please call the roll.
Rupp,
Did you have a good?
Rupp,
Erica, we're calling you.
Yes, thank you. I was just unmuting. Aye.
Koski,
Aye.
Maroney, Maroney,
Oh, you're muted, Maroney.
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown,
Hi.
Pape,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you, everyone. We'll move on to the last item on the agenda, DRH 20-00449, Stephen Skinner, 215 North Locust Street. Ted, could we have the report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Certificate of Appropriateness request to construct a 1-story accessory dwelling unit in the East End Historic District. This is an aerial of the property, and the actual orientation of the house is toward Locust Street, which is a little bit different than the rest of the block, which fronts Jefferson. So as such, with new construction on lots oriented like this, they run into setback issues, especially rear setback issues, which are required to be 15 feet. Or it would normally not be a problem if the house was maybe fronting Jefferson and you have the more elongated side of the property going north-south. So this is the site plan. This is the existing house. And as you can see, the front portion of the house is about 14 feet 4 inches, with the ADU here in the black square about 15 feet from that Locust Street property line. So they're pretty, it appears the ADU will actually be in front of the main wall plane, main facade area of the house, but a bit behind the bump out area. And this is the elevations. These are the elevations of the ADU. Again, 1-story ADU. And then photos of the house. So this is the front as it fronts Locust. So the ADU appears like it'll be a bit behind this front forward section, but a little bit in front or behind this section, but a little bit in front of the main wall. And then some photos of neighboring property. We did get one public comment in support of the application. And the concerns, as indicated, are that the ADU is too close to the facade of this. This is a contributing house. And so it's too close to that front facade of the contributing house and is not subordinate enough to the contributing house. So we did have a condition of approval that it be at least 5 feet setback from that main wall plane on the house, that the ADU be set back at least 5 feet, which isn't a lot, but there's not a lot of room for it to really move because of the orientation of the lot. So we kind of just came up with 5 feet for this detached structure to be set back and to hopefully make it subordinate to the main structure on the property. And with that condition and others, we recommend approval of DRH 2449. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Is the applicant present? Yes. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 20 minutes.
My name is Stephen Skinner. What else you need to know?
And your address?
215 Locust, Boise, 83712.
That's perfect. You have 20 minutes to talk.
The thing that happened with the house is that originally I applied for I was going to apply for a variance to meet the requirements of the back side of the house on the west side. And we called up the city. I have an architect that called the city, and they told us that since my house faced Locust Street, that the ADU the setback would only have to be 15 feet. And the setback, the distance from my house to the street, the main house, is actually less than the distance from the street to the ADU. So it doesn't go out beyond the face of it. And I have an architect that I think she's attending the meeting virtually, and a lawyer that they can talk about that.
They can talk about that right now during this 20 minutes.
How do they join in? They're on.
Would you like them to join in? We can have them do that if that's what you want to do.
If they could join in, they could explain it a little bit better.
If you're out there online and part of the on the same party with the applicant, could you please raise your hand virtually so we can see you? Well, just hang tight. We're just he's working on it. Okay, we have someone raising their hand. Okay, if
I'm
you're there,
Leah
please
McMillan.
unmute and state your name and address for the record.
I'm Leah McMillan. My address is 3050 West Hester in Boise. I'm the architect on the project. And we did have a pre-app and talked about how if we didn't go into the rear yard, we wouldn't need a variance, that we could observe the 15-foot setback in the rear and the 15-foot front setback and not have to go through another application, just start with the historic appropriateness application. The house or the ADU is slightly modified from what the owner originally wanted to do so that we didn't have to apply for a variance to be in the setbacks. In this case, we felt that the house, the new ADU part of the house, provided enough separation from the existing dwelling that it gave yard space and separation between the two, as well as letting it have a patio on the south side closer to the garage. We feel that if we had to reconfigure the size, we would lose more yard space, more open space, and end up closer to the existing dwelling.
Okay, thank you. Do anything else more to add at this point? You'll have time for rebuttal later.
Thanks. I think that'll do.
Okay. Sir, if you still have some time left if you want to continue speaking.
I couldn't really understand that very well, but anyhow, one of my main things is that the way the house is designed right now, it fits the yard so much better. Because my kids are going to live in one house, I'm going to live in the other one, and it'll leave room for a yard between the houses, and also being closer to Locust, I'll have room in the backyard. I have a tree out there that I planted 35 years ago with my son, and it's an apricot tree, and I wanted to keep that as part of the house. And it fits a lot better with the lot, because the front of the house on Locust, the part that sticks out from the main house, is going to be pretty close to where the ADU starts as far as distance from the street. And it kind of leaves a natural courtyard there where you could have a nice yard for the grandkids, the kids to play in. And I'm going to do the house all in stucco, just like the original house. All the windows are going to be period from the house of the 1930s, and it's going to look good. But it just looks, if I was made to move it back, to get the square footage, I'd have to elongate the front, and it'd look, more like a kind of a double wide than a house, a house that really fits there. So I think it's a good design. I'd just like to consider that part of it. And we also, I'm sorry, I couldn't understand what she was saying on the intercom, but we also checked with the city after, we did the drawings, and they told us, that's why I originally had Lee go ahead and do the plans like that, because they told us that we could be that distance from Locust with the ADU. And it's only a foot difference or so, but otherwise I'd have to go back and apply for a variance on the backside, which would put it closer to the neighbor's fence, and it'd kind of ruin really the look of the yard, so, and take the tree out. So is that clear, or?
Yeah, thank you.
Is it kind of, you understand what I'm saying?
Well, if we have questions, if some of the commissioners have questions, we'll ask.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
But
Mr. Chairman, there's also a David Skinner with his hand raised. David, you are unmuted and can speak if you'd like.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you, David.
Yeah, I'm Steve's brother. I just help him with all types of projects like this. And I think everything's been covered. Just a couple points I'd like to make further. One, there's absolutely no opposition from any neighbors, any associations, anybody nearby. All of the neighbors are great friends of Steve. He's been there for 30 years, and all of them are excited about this dwelling he's going to put there. It's kind of been confusing, but this ADU is still behind the main house. It's not in front of it, it's behind it. It's only a foot behind it, but it's behind it. So I think that's been a little confusing. The final point is, I think that's important to make is it's really kind of the luck of the draw here, because the house happened to be built with the front door on Locust. If the front door was out Roosevelt, the other side, none of this would just be an issue, because all the setbacks would be in accordance. So when you're on a corner lot, you kind of get double punished here, because just because the house faces Locust, then what becomes the back would have been the side, and all those things get inverted. So I think he's worked with Leah. We've worked hard to try to build this and make this to fit within the neighborhood. There's several ADUs in the neighboring blocks. Leah's done all she can to comply with everything, and we really think it's a nice project. He's been a longtime member of the community. We're lifelong, Boise City residents, and I know the city wants to have density in there, and this is exactly the kind of proposal I think they're looking for, is somebody trying to build an extra place for their kids, because it's so hard to rent and purchase a property in this house when you're just young and getting started. So those are just things I'd like to add, and thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anyone else of your party willing to testify during your time period? You're good? Okay. Commissioners, do we have any questions for the staff or the applicant? I have a question for staff, question for Ted. Looking at the proposed site plan, okay, there's lots of discussion here about it being in front of, it not being in front of. I think maybe for clarity, I'm looking at the site plan, and it looks like the east side of the existing house, which is on Locust, which is the front of the house, has I'll call it a bump out, but on the northern corner there, that bumps out closer to the street, and it looks like it has a 14-foot setback versus the proposed ADU being at 15 foot. So is that what the applicant was commenting on, and how that the ADU is in fact behind that portion, but the staff has determined that the main portion of the house is what's 20-foot setback. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, yes, the ADU is technically not in front of the main structure. If it were, they'd also require a conditional use permit, because that's required for accessory structures when they're in front. It is a foot behind that section of the house that sticks out. So it is technically behind the house. Staff's concern was less with it being just behind the house, but with it being behind enough to where it didn't, it was subordinate. The guidelines call for accessory structures to be subordinate to the main structure. So in our staff review, I felt like that it wasn't positioned subordinate to the main house on the property. It is technically behind the main house as it sits facing Locust Street. It was just using the language of our guidelines and having these accessory structures being subordinate. Staff felt like it needed to go back a little bit further to be subordinate to the house, which is why we put the condition of approval in there. Now, with that being said, it is understood that the orientation of the lot makes that really difficult. So if you were to keep the footprint of the ADU as it is now and move it back at a minimum of 5 feet, they're already right at the rear setback mark of 15 feet. So you move it back at all, they're going to need a variance, or they're going to need to shrink the ADU significantly. So it is understood there are issues with that, with the setbacks and the orientation of the lot. However, staff's condition is based on just the language of the guidelines and having these accessory structures subordinate to the main structure. And maybe normally we'd require more than 5 feet probably, but in this case, it's pretty tough just because of the way the house is oriented. And the person that spoke earlier is correct. If the house was oriented toward Jefferson Street to the north, the way most of them are, this really wouldn't be much of an issue because it would be behind technically. So it's really about the orientation of the house on the lot.
So when you say in the conditions of approval of bringing it, setting it back 5 feet, it would then be based on the proposed site plan that we're looking at. It would then be equal to what you're calling the main front line of the house, or back even a
The
little bit.
intent of that condition was that it be 5 feet from this main wall plane. Here.
5 feet from the main wall plane.
Yeah, so
So
setback probably back into here. So it'd have to go more than 5 feet back from where it is now. Whatever this distance is to here, plus 5 feet. So maybe about
10 feet
back
plus or
from
minus?
where it is now, plus or minus. So you're talking, it would be about 5 feet roughly from that rear property line. So, and again, it was brought up, the downside to that is you are eating up some of that yard space behind the building, but it's just an unfortunate situation of how the house is oriented on the lot, really.
Okay, thank you. I see some virtual hands being raised, so public other comment will get to you. So just be patient. We're going to go in the correct order here. Do we have any other questions for staff or the applicant from the commissioners?
I have a question.
Okay, Commissioner Brown, go ahead.
So if we kept the same, the setback the applicant is proposing, I have a question for the architect. Is it possible to differentiate the stucco finish? There's different variations of stucco and how it can be finished. Can there be a different style of windows so we're not creating a false sense of history, and that we know this house was added where it is on the lot, and it's not mimicking the house next to it?
If the architect's out there, please go ahead and speak.
Hi, I'm Leah. I'm the architect.
Okay, go ahead.
Of course, we can change the stucco. The ADU is proposed to be shorter and in smaller in square footage than the primary dwelling. But if you'd like a different kind of trim, a different kind of window, of course, that's possible. You have to understand that it's difficult for us to try to guess when you want us to match the windows and when you don't want us to match the windows, for example. If you don't want them to have divided lights, if you want them out of a different material, all that is, of course, an option. The owner is not married to these dwellings being big sister, little sister. We just know that they need to relate to each other to meet the guidelines.
Thank you.
You'll have an opportunity to comment in a minute. Any other questions from the commissioners before we move on to the neighborhood association? Okay, I see Ina is here. Ina, if you would speak, you can unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record, and you have 20 minutes.
Hi, this is Sheila Grisham with Ina. I live at 1204 East State Street, Boise, 83712. I would say originally I had some concerns with the ADU being about 2/3 of the size of the house. I was a little concerned about how that would look on the lot. To me, it would look like the lot had been subdivided without actually having been subdivided. But I must say, after hearing the story and how this ADU is going to be used, it warms my heart. This is what this neighborhood is all about. And so I appreciate the application, and I'm glad that they the family is able to work this out. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I know there's, is there any other neighborhood associations that are nearby that want to speak up? Sherry B, is this something you'd like to comment on?
It's actually all over. Commissioner Koski, it's Sherry Batazzo at the North End Neighborhood Association, 1110 West Eastman Street. And only because you asked and because I stayed on till the end of the meeting, I visited briefly with the East End Neighborhood Association today regarding this application and agreed to stay late to listen for it. I was curious about the way that the plans were presented. The elevations seemed fairly vague. So I wondered if it was something that you guys would approve. There's just been a number of items that have been brought up for discussion. So I really don't have any comments aside from curiosity about what looks like a vague, thank you, Ted, for bringing that up, what looks like vague elevations. At the same time, I looked at the pictures of the property and saw that it was stucco and it was fairly simple in its design, and the ADU seemed to match what was there. And I think Commissioner Brown often brings up, and I really appreciate that we shouldn't replicate history. But at the same time, it can be nice to have something that matches in some way, shape, or form and doesn't actually look like the increased density and structures that are added in new construction to the neighborhood. So just some comments, but really that's it. So thanks for asking.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Nina. At this time, we have, if there's anyone else that would like to comment, please raise your virtual hand. And then we'll have you come forward and state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes. So who's first?
Hi, this is Krista Broderick. Can you hear me?
We sure can. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Great. Thank you.
Your address,
My name's Krista Broderick French. I live at 1208 East Franklin Street, Boise 83712. And I'm just a few blocks up from this location at Franklin and Locust. And I think this is a great example of what we want to add into our neighborhood. I'm in total support of it. And I think it's a great addition. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have someone else? Okay, without any further public comment, are there any last questions for the staff or the applicant from the commissioners? Okay, hearing no more of that. The applicant, you do have 5 more minutes for rebuttal if you'd like to come up and speak.
This intercom system, so I'd just like to address what she was talking about the finish on the house.
Okay.
And the house is an old stucco style house from the 1930s. It's craftsman style stucco. All the inside walls are stucco coved over. And I really want to stay with the same style on the outside and have the same windows. So it, and the design of the roof is going to match the pitch on the roof on my house so that they kind of mimic each other and fit in with the neighborhood. I think it would look funny to put a different style house in there. So that's why I wanted to keep with the stucco theme and basically have it the same color and the same roof and look like it fits in there into the neighborhood instead of doing something that looks odd. So that's why I wanted to stay with the stucco style and the French windows and, you know, basically the same type of house. So that's the rest of that. I really can't understand this intercom system. I don't know if it's my hearing or just where I'm sitting, but I didn't understand a lot of that, but I did understand that one person was in favor of it. So anyhow, all right. Hey, thank you.
Thank you. The comments were, you had comments that were in favor of your project. So the comments that you were coming online were in favor of your project. Okay, with that, I'll close the public portion of the hearing and consider a motion and a second and discussion. So We don't have Commissioner Richter here, so someone's going to have a motion.
Well, I'll go ahead and start and make a motion, and then we can have some discussion. I move that we approve DRH 20-0049 with staff's recommendations.
Do we have a motion from Commissioner Weaver? Do we have a second?
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Does that mean you want it to be set back the additional 5 feet from the predominant facade that staff was talking about?
Yeah, for now, at least that would be in the motion, but I think that would be what would be up for discussion.
Okay, we have a motion on the table for approval of DRH 20000449 based on the conditions of approval from staff. Do we have a second? And I'll just make a comment to the commissioners that in order to, in the proper way, I guess, to Robert's Rules way of discussing a topic is to have a motion and a second to discuss it. It will go to vote, and if it, that opens up things for discussion. So if there's a second, we can move on to discussion. Otherwise, we'll have to throw this motion out. Okay. No second. Okay, Commissioner Weaver, would you like to restate your motion?
Sure, I will do that because no discussion is is good enough as discussion. I move that we approve DRH 20-0049 with staff's recommendations, except for the requirement to have the 5-foot setback. I was just trying to see here which is, I'm sorry, item E. We strike item E from the conditions.
I'll second that.
A motion and it's second by Commissioner Maroney. Okay, Danielle, maybe, or Commissioner Weaver, maybe you'd like to discuss your motion a little bit first. Would you like to start?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that it sounds like through all the discussion that it is going to be very difficult to do that, and you know, typically, you know, we wouldn't want the garage or any kind of other structures on the site to be, you know, in forward of the house itself. But in this case, it makes sense, and it is a very unique condition. And I think that in the end, it will probably end up being where it is anyways, just by going through all the additional approvals with the city and trying to get that to work out. So because it's still technically behind the house and quite a bit behind the house, I think that it will be fine.
Okay, I actually have a comment. I just don't, I would have seconded your first motion because I think having it, I agree with staff's recommendations of it being set back further. I don't believe that this is subordinate to the main house sitting out like that. I think when you're looking at it from the street, I think it'll look like two different homes instead of a subordinate structure to the main house. That being said, you know, I think we've got support from the neighborhood association. I understand the situation and what the property owner is trying to do. And I understand the restriction of the side setback as it is, I guess, on the back of this new proposed building. I understand that being a difficult thing to work through. I would like to see it set back from the front as per staff's recommendations, and have the applicant pursue getting a variance on the setback on behind that ADU, and I guess that would be the side yard, or is that the backyard? What the west border of the yard. I would like to see him pursue that versus having it as far forward as it is in front of the main portion of the house on Locust Street. So I'm leaning towards not voting approval on the motion because of that.
This is Commissioner Rupp, and Commissioner Weaver, thank you for getting to it before. I was trying to scroll through and find the right notes to be able to make the motion. So I appreciate you making the motion. I understand where Commissioner Koski is coming from, but I think with the testimony that we have before us and the information that I heard, I would be in support of the motion that you presented and what the applicant is also requesting.
Thank you. Any other discussion from the commissioners?
I do have some discussion. So I'm looking at this as a second house basically on this lot, because with the current house that's there, it is facing the other street. It's not oriented like all the other houses. So it's almost impossible to put an ADU that's going to be submissive to that house. And so that's why I was recommending that you just take some minor tweaks. You change the windows, you can have the stucco, but stucco has different finishes. You have smooth finish, you have like a cottage style, you have the Spanish that can be thicker and waved out. So differentiating the stucco finish, just to make these minor changes that we know that it was not there in 1930, even though it can't be submissive. It's the luck of the draw, like they said with this lot. So I think I'd like to see the applicant go back and kind of retool the design. Just slightly, they're minor changes, but.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I just want to say that I support this project. I think the reason why we have a commission is because we take these things on a case-by-case basis, right? If there weren't unique situations, a computer could do our jobs and it'd be really straightforward. And so because we do things on a case-by-case basis, because we see funky things in the city like we've seen, several times tonight, we can consider the stories behind things and what history we're trying to preserve and whose history we're trying to preserve. And I think a lot of it comes down to also the character of these neighborhoods. And so if we're looking at this design, I think allowing it to be forward, they can keep this better design project. Like the house, it looks cute. Like he was saying, if you set it back and you start to mess with things, it's going to become longer. It might not be as cute or as visually appealing as the design that they have now. But also, the homeowner is talking about a house or a tree in his backyard that he planted with his son 30 years ago. Like the personal history of these blocks also has something to do with the character, right? And so we are able to listen to these stories and to make these decisions on a case-by-case basis. And I think, yes, it is a unique situation. Yes, it's not a typical ADU, but I think they've done a good design. I think they've tried to keep it congruent. I think that they're probably getting conflicting opinions from us right now where we're saying we want it to match, but we want you to change things. I think they've done a good job. I think it looks good. And I think we can make the variance in this case. And that's why I'm in support of this project.
Thank you, Commissioner Maroney. Anyone else?
Yeah, I guess one other thing I just would like to add to is the overhang over the entrance. It's primarily, I think, what's sticking out in front of the other house, and that most of the house, unless that's not what's in the, I guess it's hard to tell. Maybe that's not what's in the black area that will stick out a little bit more, but it's fairly minimal beyond the house, the main house.
Okay, so I see what you're saying is I guess we don't know that from the drawing if the black square on the property is the overhang over the door or if it's the front wall of the building. So I guess that's
Yeah.
what you're commenting on.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, yeah, it's hard to tell. I think it's probably doesn't make much of a difference, but that's probably mostly what's going to be sticking out beyond the house.
Okay. I like it. I like the discussion we're having, and I like the neighborhood associations and people speaking up. So I think that's great. Do we have any other discussion before we call the roll? Okay, without any further discussion, Victoria, would you call the roll, please?
Rupp,
Aye.
Koski,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown, Pate. Pate.
Oh, sorry. Aye.
Motion carries 5 in favor, 1 opposed.
Okay, and I think that was last item on our agenda for this evening. With that, thank you everyone for being patient with me running my first meeting on the fly. But thank you everybody, and we'll adjourn the meeting. Have a good night.
Thank you. You did excellent.